Welcome back, nerd friends. XR2 install and setup. That's right. It has been a minute since I've done an unboxing. I don't think I've done the XR2 yet, so I figured I was well overdue. I've got a new rig that I'm working with. I'm not really working on a new rig. I'm just getting this ready to put into a new rig. We'll also go through the setup, the updates, what all the settings do, soldering, all that fun stuff. Fresh opening of the box. You guys ready for this? Because the angels are about to sing. Every time I open one of these up, you get the So this is the XR2 combo. That is the 540L motor, which is slightly longer than a 540 motor, with the 2100 kV. Ready? There it is. Inside, you have individually packaged motor and speed control, fully tested, ready to go. Just have to solder the motor wires on the speed control, and then we will be all set. I also tend to shorten on my power lead, so we'll do that also. So let's pop these bad boys open. There, inside is the motor. Push this guy out of here. I save these for storing things in. I got all these boxes in my workbench that hold things. It's like having little shelves. When you need to move stuff and clean them around, you just take the box. So there is the X540L in all its beautiful glory. Normal 1/8 inch shaft. It's a little bit longer than a normal 540 motor. That's what the L stands for. Let me get my calipers. So to show you exactly, it is 57 and some change. We'll call it 58 millimeters, basically, depending on how hard you push on your calipers. And then the diameter is 36 millimeters, give or take. So what is that in American? That is 2.28 inches, or 1.4. See, there you go. Ooh. Your best friend in the whole wide world, the user manual. It has default settings, how to reset things. The questions that you may feel that you have are probably in here. You could check it out if you want, or you could watch this video. You get some zip ties, some sweet HOBBYWING decals, and some double-side tape for the switch, a little bit of shrink tubing. And then the speed control comes with a fan pre-installed and this wire that you can plug into 5 or 6 volt output on your receiver or servo extension, whatever the case may be. I still haven't, I mean, I don't know if I should say this or not, but I still haven't really used the fan on any of my axes so far. So I tend to take these off and not run them. If you're doing super heavy duty load stuff, like your rig's ultra heavy, you drive out in the desert and there's sun beating down on your rocks all the time, you'll be able to take advantage of just having this fan installed. If you want a pro tip to keep the fan alive longer, a lot of times these fan blades will pop out of the housing when you tumble upside down. If you take like an old piece of zip tie and drill 2 holes in it and make a cross brace that goes underneath the screws, it'll stop that fan housing from popping out and keep it alive for a very long time. And besides, this is only a 2100 kV and it's going in one of my trail rigs, so. Besides, I just drive it in the water if it starts to get hot. So there we have a beautiful XR2 speed control. Different than the original Axe version 1 or the Axe 1.1, and that the amp rating is a little bit higher, and it's got some improvements on the heatsink mounting. And it also has the updated real-time data output. So you can pull your app up on your phone while you're driving along the trail and check on speed control, motor temperatures. You can watch live output of the RPM of the motor and voltage levels of the battery. So cool stuff. I always tend to do my motor setup full length like this. I just leave the motor wires full tilt and then I plug them in because that happens to be the same size as the sensor harness, so that works out quite nicely. So what I'm going to do next is solder up the motor to the speed control, and then we'll do the update to the firmware. When you are soldering, be sure to always work in a well-ventilated area. You don't want to breathe in solder fumes. They are very bad. They shorten your life. It's no fun. When I do fresh installs, I like to tin the wires. If I'm doing a redo, I'll clean out the old solder, and I'll show you how to do that just in case. It's good for when you're rewiring. Basically, take the speed control, turn it on its side, and you can kind of heat up the solder and scoop it out that way, and you can get excess solder out. So the factory solder is lead-free, high silver solder. So it's pretty high temperature stuff, and it can be problematic. If you have a hard time with that or you don't have a good iron, just snip these and then restrip and tin them. Mine's all right, so we're just gonna hammer them down. And then you do have to put these in order. There's A, B, and C marked on the motor, A, B, and C marked on the speed control as well. So make sure you do those in the right order. Otherwise, you're gonna have a real bad time. When I solder, I hit the iron like that. I do a little fresh tin on the wire, and then I lay that right into the cup, apply the heat, and then you want to put downward pressure through the wire so that it doesn't float in the solder. If the wire is floating in the solder, you're going to have a bad connection because solder is a poor conductor, oddly enough. You would think that solder would be a good connector and you would use it like glue, but you're basically just using it to hold the wires in place. And then as you can, these are a little long, so I'm going to trim that one down because it's hanging way past there. That one's a little long too, so I'll trim that one off. You may be asking, what's this wood block for? Well, it's so that when you solder on things and if solder splashes or the wire falls off, you don't melt your nice map. So good job using that. I use leaded solder, lead tin solder. My local hobby shop still gets this stuff. And it's getting harder and harder to find leaded solder, but it's 6040 rosin core lead tin solder is my favorite flavor of solder. If you can't find that and you have to buy the lead-free silver solder, make sure you get yourself a little bit of flux. The sensor plug is keyed. Make sure that you don't just try to jam that in there. You take a look and line it up. It has arrows on the top also. And it's a nice rubber fit. And you hear the little click and then away you go. So now that is done, I'm going to shorten up these power leads because these are a little bit excessive. With the length of the battery wires and then the length of this is, I'm not sure. I've tried to get these to be made shorter, but it's better to have too much wire than not enough, I suppose. So you just hit that like that. Man, and then you want to be careful not to take your hot solder wire and touch your soft wires. I'm going to just basically cut this, give or take, in half. Most of my trucks, the battery is pretty close to the electronics, so I'm not sweating it. Always use strippers on your wires, or if you don't, be very, very careful of the wire strands. When you strip and tin wires, the big problem can be the strands on the edges get broken, and they'll kind of pop out of there while you're doing soldering and get into stuff. So it's important to twist these nice and tight and then re-tin them properly. When I tin my wires, I try to lay them sideways so that the solder doesn't want to go down the wire like crazy. And then you want to just do enough solder, you heat it up, and then you push the solder on from the back side of the wire. So a little there, and then feed the solder in from the back side of the wire, and then you get a nice even layer. You want just enough that you can still barely see the strands of wire. Look, I used the wood. And then these guys, I like to put these kind of a little bit upward, so I'm going to lay them in and kind of push on the wire while I solder this back. That's not a great shot, but so these guys are going to lay in flat like this and kind of come up on an angle. And then see how these are full of solder right now. I don't want all that solder in there, so I'm going to go like this. And for all the folks that are international that call it solder, I know. I also say aluminum instead of aluminium. So we can debate about how things are spelled and pronounced another day. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so the little tap there gets the solder to drop out in case it's not cooperating, because you don't want to be laying the heat onto this thing for much longer than this. So you get most of the solder out of there. I'm sure that this isn't even, can't even see that, but you get the idea. I'm turning it upside down and letting the solder fall onto the iron and then dumping it off over there. And then after that, I'll just touch a little bit of this fresh solder on there just to get everything nice and friendly with each other. This guy is gonna go in here. Like that. This guy's gonna go in here. Like And I'm pushing the wire down through the solder onto the post so that it gets all the way in there. But that didn't show up very well, but you get the idea. Nice and clean. It's laid back on there. Now that this is ready to install into the truck, this could be done in the truck as well. Obviously, you could install this speed control. I tend to like to work on them on the bench and then put them in. I've done a bunch of these installs, so this wire length works for most of my rigs and most of the rigs that I've dealt with. But before you finish off the install, you want to connect it to the app, update it, and then... So to do the update, you could do it with just the speed control disconnected. The motor has to be connected, at least the sensor wires do. All right, so I'm going against my own advice and I'm using this adapter. I hate adapters, but it's what I got for now. Connect to the app and then check for the update. You turn the speed control on. It'll beep at you a little bit first. And then you tap this little link guy up here, and that'll... Oh, see, this is the all fresh stuff. We're gonna, while using the app, it's gonna check for devices. There I am, HW. Tells me my default password. I hit OK. And then we're in. So you can go to parameters and look at the speed control. We're gonna go to firmware update and check for all of that first. So it takes a moment to load. And then it'll go down to, it'll show you what speed control it thinks it is, what hardware it has, what firmware is in there, and then what's available. And as you can see, we have an update available. So I'm going to tap update, and it's going to tell you, to ensure safety, please remove the propellers, wheels, ensure that the Bluetooth is always operation before the update, never lock the screen, all that fun stuff. Don't be farther than 1.5 meters away. Hit OK, and it starts the process, and we're just going to let this sit right here. Now this is not an ultra fast process, but you get the idea. Update completed. You must do the automatic motor pairing when updating the ESC firmware. Please refer to the user manual, the HOBBYWING website video to learn how the automatic motor pairing works. That is a crucial point that a lot of people overlook, and I will show you now. So you've done your firmware update, and you're going to do the automatic motor pairing process. It is very straightforward. With the speed control disconnected from the receiver and it not engaged into your drivetrain, you turn on the speed control. It'll start to blink at you. And then you very simply hold down the set button. It starts to blink and the motor starts to run. The motor runs for, I don't know, 10 seconds or so, and then it stops and it runs again. It's still running. There it stops. Here it goes. It's so quiet and smooth. It's running though. I can feel it. It's still running the motor, ramps it up, ramps it down, stops, runs it again, stops, it blinks, and then once it beeps the 1, 2, 3 at the end, automatic motor pairing complete. If you have any problems with operation of your vehicle ever, do the automatic motor pairing process. The only downside is you do have to unplug it from the receiver, and you have to either remove the pinion gear or unhook it from the spur gear. Now that that's done, we're ready to do the install to the vehicle and calibrate it to the radio. After you have done your update, you've done your automatic motor pairing, you're going to install the system into your truck, you're going to hook it up to your radio, and then you're almost ready to go. One more thing, got to calibrate. The speed control itself plugs into channel number 2 on your receiver. There's markings on the edge of the plastic that's opposite the little prongs that you can see an S, a plus, and a minus. The S is signal, minus is negative. On most receivers, that negative wire goes towards the outside edge. Just make sure that the speed control is in channel number 2. It can be pretty tricky. Some receivers have 2 channel number 1s, or they got an empty slot. So this one, it's marked number 2. That's where I'm going. The calibration process is fairly straightforward. Let me move this stuff so we can make sure that we can see all the lights. All right, the quick and dirty on the calibration is pretty straightforward. You hold down the set button, turn the speed control on, it'll start to beep. It's asking you to set the neutral, so you don't touch anything, tap the button, sets the neutral, go to full throttle and hold, tap the button, 2 beeps for full throttle, full reverse and hold, tap the button, 3 beeps for full reverse, and then you're all done. calibration completed after that, the motor works. Now at this stage, you would slowly drive the truck and make sure that the rotation is correct, that forward is forward, reverse is reverse. If it's not, do not switch your radio. You're going to go into the app and change the motor rotation. We're going to connect back to the app and look through all the settings. So your install is complete. You've determined that you want to make some setting changes. Very simple. Speed control is turned on. The app gets opened. You tap the little icon. It's going to ask you which one. We want the HOBBYWING one, of course. And we are in. To see you don't go to settings. You would think that the settings for the speed control would be in settings. That's the settings for the app. Something very cool about this guy is that in the data logging screen, there's no data recording, but there is real-time data output, and you can see the voltage of the battery, the current draw that the speed control has, the temperature of the speed control, as well as the motor, throttle position, which I think is pretty neat, and the RPMs. So very cool stuff. Let's see. If you go in, you can program in your, if you go into the settings, you can put your gear ratios and tire sizes and all that fun stuff, and it'll give you like a real-time mile-an-hour calculation. So back out of there, and we're going to go into parameters and look at the stuff that really matters, the speed control settings. So you have, you can name the profile at the top, you can reset it, you can import, export, and save. That's what all the buttons on the top do. But what we're mainly worried about is what all these cool settings do. So we'll run through that. Running mode is cool because now in the XR2 you have basher mode, so you get forward reverse with brakes. So if you're a rock racer and you don't like to rock crawl drive, you can use that mode. Cut off voltage. Low is about 3.3-ish per cell. Intermediate's probably about 3.5, 3.6 per cell. And then high is going to be probably like 3.7, 3.8 per cell. Depends. Depending on the battery pack, the load, the plugs, how cold it is, these numbers, the actual voltage numbers change a little bit. That's why we have low, medium, and high basically. Low is more runtime, high is less runtime. I leave that on intermediate most of the time. Now the RPM and throttle matching, this is basically turning your FOC up or down. FOC is very unique in that it can match RPM to your throttle, and this allows you to adjust that. If you like to have a little bit of delay when you run up to a rock or an obstacle where you have to give it a little more gas and has that bit of a stall, you want to turn that to low. If you're not into that sort of thing, intermediate or high is the way to go. I really like it locked in, so I set mine to high. And then max forward or force is pretty straightforward. That's if you want full speed or not. So let's say you're giving this to somebody to drive, it's too fast for them, you can turn that down. Max reverse force is the same thing. It defaults turned down because a lot of folks don't like that. I like to have my reverse almost all the way up, not quite, because I get a little panicky on my reverse. And then we'll go down to the next one. None of these save until you hit save, so you can go back and undo this stuff. Turbo timing, turbo delay are what I used to call rock boost. So it gives you bonus RPM after full throttle. I like wheel speed. I turn this up. It takes away a little runtime. It can add temperature if you're using a lot of full speed. If you use no delay, you'll never even know it's there. It's just this, it just makes the motor faster essentially at the cost of timing and temperature. I like to know that it's there. It makes me feel like I got a 2-speed in there and I get to show people. So I turn this all the way up for max delay so that I go full throttle. It's a half a second. It kicks into higher RPM. It's kind of cool. Drag brake force is how strong your automatic or your neutral brakes are. I don't like that all the way up. I turn mine down almost all the way to 50%. And then if you go to the drag brake increase rate, this is how fast your drag brakes come on. In the R2, auto is the best. I always use auto because it adjusts for the speed of the motor. It looks how fast the motor's going and it applies the brakes at the right speed for that. So fast it applies them slow, slow it applies them fast, if that makes sense. Throttle increase rate is your punch or how linear your throttle is. If you have a real nervous finger or you snap to full throttle and you don't want the truck to do that, you can turn this down. I like it to be very linear, so I turn mine all the way up. Your BEC voltage is exactly that. It's the power out to your receiver and your servo. So you can adjust that to 7.4 or 6.0. All my stuff is normal. And then motor rotation, this is what we came in here for. If your truck goes backwards when you first set it up, this is the setting that you change. And most of my trucks have backwards transmissions in them now. So if you're not going to change the name of your speed control, do yourself a favor and at least rename your profile so that in case, you know, you're messing around with stuff, people see that it's your profile, not theirs, I guess. So I like to put my name on it and then I put save. Are you sure you want to save? Yes. Like any good program, are you sure? And then you back out and exit the app and you are good to go. So after setting changes, you will cycle power and then everything goes back. Okay, so that timing stuff I was talking about. Get that little extra RPM. It's real fun on trail. So there you have it, folks, the quick and dirty on the install of a brand new XR2, covering everything from the firmware update to the setting changes and the installation of the system to itself. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please do shoot us an email, northamerica@hobbywing.com. See you next time.